Hello and welcome to a special topical podcast from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Daniel Cody and with me as always are Craig Savage and Charlie Betts. And today we've got another brief topical podcast to do because there has been some very alarming and very controversial action at the bottom of League Two as Macclesfield were announced off the pitch yesterday to be relegated due to a further points deduction with Stevenage given a reprieve. Now, there's a few things we've got to talk about here. We're not going to give too much in terms of opinions. We want to state facts and give you the opportunity to have your say. Because obviously the timing is awful. 4.5 weeks before the season, both clubs already preparing for life in their expected division this season. And there is a lot going on off the pitch at Macclesfield too, which we've probably got to address. But firstly, I just want your initial reaction because it came a little bit out of the blue last night, didn't it?
Well, no, because they expected it to announce it on Tuesday evening. To be honest, the way this has been going, I'm utterly shocked that the EFL is so happy that they got Macclesfield more points deducted. And I think they've got up to like 16 now, 16, 17, whatever it is. Obviously, coming from Luton, we've lost 30, 40 points in the past. To have it this late, they probably started pre-season now, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
They've probably started pre-season, and it's, to be honest, it sums up the EFL this season, not just in League Two, but obviously in the Championship and obviously with points per game. They're just an absolute farce.
And that's the thing I wanted to move on to, really. And I'll come across to Charlie now, because as you say, Macclesfield in total deducted 17 points now. Something that the season Luton went down, happened to Bournemouth and Rotherham as well. But I think the biggest thing that seemed to be in the reaction to all of these decisions, yes, the timing was poor, but is consistency. We've seen what happened to Wigan. We've seen what hasn't happened yet with Sheffield Wednesday that's going to happen next season. Just the one thing that I can't get out of it, no matter what you think of each individual decision, is it doesn't make sense when you put them all together.
No, I think that I just agree with Craig quickly as well. They almost felt like a bit of gloating from the EFL, which is awful when you think what the ramifications for, not Stevenage's problem, but the sort of ramifications for both clubs. But I think what shocked me really is, like you say, about the inconsistency. I think the first offence that they got, I know it was a total of 17 points. It was last year, wasn't it? I think that it was the 19th of December. It's all kicked off. Yeah. So they're obviously heading down that route. You know, you've got a timeline then of events after that. Even as I think it was 9th of June is when they got another 4 points. Yeah. Why that could have then been made that week, the decision of whether they were going to stay in, stay out. I don't understand, given how much time everyone's had off, inverted commas, why we've had to wait until mid-August for a decision on a club's future, really. You know, it makes zero sense. And moreover on that, then the implication it has for other clubs that they can choose was it 2 weeks ago Sheffield Wednesday got their punishment?
Yeah.
But that's next season. But in a matter of 2 weeks more, we're going to punish a team for this season, the past season. It makes no sense. It's literally like they're making it up on the fly. And it's all well and good people saying, oh, this is wrong. But actually it has to stop somewhere because this will start to bury other clubs, excuse the pun.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to go too long because it's pretty clear that the main thought from everyone is inconsistency, which seems to be the key because there's no real rule book on the punishments that are given out, which is the problem. But as Craig mentioned, there is a little bit of a bizarre situation to this where, as Charlie mentioned, on the 9th of June, Macclesfield were given a suspended 4-point deduction and the EFL are repealing points deduction decisions from an independent panel and referring that appeal to another independent arbitration panel set up. It all just stinks of absolute nonsense, doesn't it?
No, I totally agree. If you're going to compare this one to the Sheffield Wednesday one, where this was done by an independent review and they've got their 12-point deduction and that's for next season. Now they're appealing for that. So why are we going on and on and on? But obviously this is now final. But why is this still going on and on? So why can't EFL make a decision? It took so long with Berry, and I'm not blaming obviously people that work for Berry apart from the owner. That took so long. The Bolton thing took so long. The Wigan thing now it's taking a little bit too long. Obviously, fitting person. Charlton's going to be another problem for EFL to sort out. It's an absolute joke. I feel for the Macclesfield fans. I feel for the players. Obviously, it's been a turbulent year for them. They went on strike just before an FA Cup tie. They haven't been paid for a couple of months. And then they get to the end of the season, they get their points deduction, which makes them survive. And then on top of that, about 3 months or 5 months of no football, and you still get no points deduction. It's beyond a joke.
Before you go on to about the sort of players and stuff, the thing that gets me, and this is where, we all work in jobs and stuff, and it's the lack of foresight in the sense that, this is their third points deduction. I don't understand why there wasn't a contingency plan of, if this happens again, within that week, we're going to go, right, unfortunately, this is your punishment, because, it's happened twice before. We've already deducted them 2 points, we've already deducted them points twice already. By the time the third one comes in, we have to do something about this. So obviously they didn't do that, but then wait another 6 weeks afterwards. I just don't understand the lack of planning and foresight that this could probably happen again. There doesn't seem to be a resolution to the problems that are going on there, and it is awful for the club. So let's plan that if this happens again, straight away, this is going to be the sanction. That's it, end of discussion, deal with it there and then. I just don't understand why it was almost like a surprise to the EFL that they had to deduct them more points. Do you know what I mean? And then we've ended up with this situation. But sorry, you're going to say it.
I mean, the main thing here is we do risk repeating a lot of what we said 2 months ago in the Wigan episode. I mean, firstly, in terms of the ownership issues. Now, I know that the EFL, I don't think, can be blamed for this owners on directors test because the chairman took over before Macclesfield were in League Two. So that would come down to an FA decision below that point. But equally, this owners and directors test, fit and proper person as it might have been then, still hasn't worked out. The chairman stepped down last week. He's still the majority shareholder and trying to get rid of the club. I mean, it's just a bit of a mess off the pitch for Macclesfield. Even since then, now their manager's rejected a new deal. Their assistant manager, Danny Butterfield, has rejected a new deal. And it looks like club legend Danny Whitaker's going to be left to pick up the pieces again, which, I mean, you've got to fear for them next season because this is the point I wanted to move on to. We've got Stevenage, who released nearly their whole squad and have been buying players bringing players in ready for a National League season. You've got Macclesfield, who weren't really able to prepare because they didn't know where they were going to be subject to an appeal. And 4.5 weeks before the season, we've got no news of when fixture announcements are going to be because of all these pending appeals. There's still the Sheffield Wednesday one. There's still the situation at Charlton, which is taking off now as well. With 4.5 weeks to go to the season, how on earth can this be a situation where we can start on time?
What I don't understand for me really quickly is that these appeals and stuff is, why it takes so long. And I know there's obviously legal stuff to it, but I think you should have 7 days. Did you break a law? Yes or no? If you did, here's the resulting punishment. But in terms of that as a club, like you say, Stevenage, not being rude, obviously on the football pitch were the worst team in the league. There's no disputing that. They've then released and tried to rebuild from there. Probably, if you don't mind me saying, not had the same budget because, as we all know, the National League, what you can operate on in the National League compared to League Two is a lot smaller. Yep. You're then asking them to then compete against teams like Bolton, whatever Bolton have been through, but big clubs like that, it's crippled Stevenage as well. And I know that people might have opinions on that. But if you were to just swap Stevenage for Club A, club they've been ruined. They've been affected by this, is what Macclesfield have. And technically, Stevenage haven't done anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? So it's what I don't understand is the EFL is almost gloating about that decision without seeing the ripple effect of that on the rest of almost the football pyramid in a weird way.
It's the weird thing of Stevenage fans celebrating another team's demise, and the same thing for Barnsley's fans celebrating Wigan's demise, which is wrong. It's not fair. Obviously, Macclesfield were there 23rd for a reason. Obviously, it weren't the worst team despite the point deductions, but obviously Stevenage were. And I think if you met the most logical Stevenage fan, they would say, yeah, we were the worst team in the league. And you have to put your hands up and accept that. But to celebrate another team's points deduction when you deserve to be down there on the pitch, it's a sad thing. I think that's what we've come to in 2020 itself, with points deductions, everything like that, or celebrating other teams' demise, and it's not right. It's not right. And I think EFL got to blame for this. Obviously, the owners, it's their fault. Obviously, how they run the club or lack of running the club. But obviously, fans have got to play a part as well. I think every club and fans got to join in together, support each other, because you look at with Bury, every team around there was supporting them. Everyone was like, no, you got to survive. And now, nearly a year later, we're celebrating teams getting 12 points deducted, celebrating team getting relegated on not from players' point of view.
I mean, you mentioned something really important there, which is the unity that's needed by fans now more than ever. Because I remember it happened to us with Luton when we were down there just over a decade ago. And the problem is, at this moment in particular, you never know who's going to be next. I mean, I don't want to get into this debate, but we saw the thing in Scotland the last few weeks where there were teams having a go at Aberdeen after a couple of player misdemeanours, and then it happened to one of the other clubs the week after. And even on something different like that, you have no idea what's going to come next. So it's very important to have a bit of perspective before you make the judgment. No one that's a real football fan wants to see any football club go bust. Yes, there needs to be punishments if off the pitch you're managed in a way that's not sustainable and you've got an unfair advantage, disadvantage. But in this case, they had a relatively small wage bill and the owner wasn't able to fulfill it, which is unfortunate because, again, at this level, as we mentioned before, once you get beyond the glitz and glamour, there are plenty of people who are relying on that income for a mortgage to pay the bills. And that's the bit that seems to be forgotten. They're on relatively normal wages at the bottom of League Two.
That was the thing I was going to say, just the human level of it. And I think that's where I get annoyed with the EFL's lack of foresight and the time it takes to make decisions. Because as a player, say, for example, you're at Stevenage, you then get released because obviously they've gone down to the National League. It's not as easy to get a contract back in the Football League if you've just been released from a club and finished bottom of the league. And then you're talking about feeding, your family, the mortgages that go with that. That these are not sustainable livings. And the point I'm making is that if this decision had been made back in June, you've then given a player 2 months to find a club, that can sustain whatever his outgoings, in his life, whatever it is, bills and stuff. But now you're giving him 4 weeks to try and find a club, or his old club take him back. Do you know what I mean? It's that human level that gets lost in all of this. And if you're a Watford player who got relegated from the Premier League, like, I don't know, for argument's sake, Ismail Sarr, he'll get a club in the Premier League, no worries, and he's probably got enough money to tide him over for, however long until he finds a club that suits him. You can't say the same for these lads. These boys in League Two, they need football constantly, and if you're giving them a tiny window to do it because of a cock-up, that's the bit that annoyed me the most about the whole thing, is the human level got lost in all of it.
And I mean, sorry, Craig, I mean, the other thing I was going to ask you is, just as we said about Wigan probably a few weeks ago, when people were in the comments talking about their demise, yes, that's fine on the pitch, but off the pitch, there's people losing their jobs who are on the minimum wage, who are relying on that income as well. It's just, I don't feel like as a football fan or on a human level, you can really celebrate that.
No, I agree. And I was just about to say, well, obviously, with today's climate, with the UK now in a recession, and obviously no fans allowed into football stadiums, it's obviously the money dried up for these clubs. And Macclesfield will probably just relying on the EFL's money for next season, just because there's something there. And now they don't have that, and the National League is a lot smaller. It's going to be much harder. I know, worry for them. I don't want to make this prediction, but I've got a weird feeling that I don't think they're going to say get to next season. I really don't.
Go on.
I want to. I want them to as well. I want them to get playing. But with today's climate, it's going to be a real struggle for them.
Yeah.
Without turning into sort of an interviewer instead, I suppose what I was going to ask you two is that, we spoke about in the Wigan video, Dan, that lessons obviously haven't been learned from when that happened to Luton years ago now. And, we said the same thing, repeating it, the madness of that again and again. Is there anything we can do as fans? Because for me, this EFL debacle can't keep going on. But I don't think it's going to change unless there's some sort of drastic action. But I don't know if as a collective group of football fans, is there anything we can do to send a message, but you don't want to start boycotting stuff because that obviously affects the clubs even more. But I don't think the EFL, I think they're so stubborn and so arrogant, and as has been proven over the last year or so with their actions. How do we change that? Because our football's not going to be sustainable if we keep it like this.
I mean, first and foremost, the fans of the clubs have got to put rivalries aside and support each other first, because that's the most important thing at this stage off the pitch. And everyone knows someone who works somewhere in a football club that's earning their wage, that's making their living off working in a football club, whether it's an administrator in an office, whether it's a receptionist, whether it's a ticket dealer, whether it's a steward, whatever. Everyone knows someone who works in a football club in the lower leagues. And we've got to support each other on that front, because we're going to lose a lot of the pyramid the way things are going. I mean, there's been more announcements about non-league that we haven't even mentioned yet. There's reductions to prize money to competitions. There's an increase in fines at the lowest levels of non-league. They're still not allowed to have fans there, despite the fact that multiple people can sit in their clubhouses 6 feet away from the pitch. I mean, there's so many things that don't seem consistent at the moment. But unfortunately, the only way change will really come is if something ultimately disastrous happens, which is 5, 6, 7 clubs going quickly, which is the unfortunate bit here.
No, I agree. I think there's far too many things to change. And it'll just keep rolling. And yes, we do need change, not just some of the game, obviously down at the bottom, but there's literally too many things that for the FA, well, for us to tell the FA, and it's so blatantly obvious, as you said, they're too stubborn. It's not just the FA, it's the EFL and it's the PFA as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rehash it too much because I know when we did the League One and League Two video, I ended on points per game. Craig made a couple of very sensible suggestions for the EFL then, but whether they will ever happen or not, I don't know. The final question I wanted to ask you, bringing it back to Macclesfield and Stevenage, but particularly Macclesfield, we've seen before with Boston where there have been demotions because of the worry about a financial stability. Craig, you've basically made your prediction of I don't know if they're going to make it to or through next year. What do you think is the most realistic outcome? Are they now, following a relegation, going to be able to get a new owner in as well?
In today's climate, it'd be tough. I really do, because obviously, as you said, the UK's in a recession now. Will they make it to the National League? I don't know. I could see a situation where it'd be another Bury where it might just be 23 teams in the National League, or someone gets a reprieve very late on to play in the National League. I don't really know.
And that's the knock on the pyramid, you say. But what about you, Charlie? What's your thought?
I think to sum it up, I think for me, the fact there was issues off the field with the club and they couldn't sell it in the Football League, being in the National League makes it even less attractive. And that's no disrespect, but I'm just, we've got to be realistic about the finances of that. So they go one of two ways. Either they'll limp through the youth team and probably get relegated again down to the National League North, or as you said, there'll be even more financial ramifications of deductions and points and financial penalties. And I hate to say it, but it'll go bust. I would like to think that hopefully between the football community, whether it's clubs in the area, even just giving them under 18s players or something like that, I'd like to think as a football community, we could limp them to the end of next season and just take stock of what happens then. But outside of a miracle owner appearing from somewhere, I can't see it changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate way to end, really. I guess the one thing we say is, despite what we think will happen, we hope that on both sides of the fence, Stevenage and Macclesfield, know what about the results on the pitch, that they've both got a team to support at the end of next season. Obviously, Stevenage is going to be helped by a reprieve, but they've been preparing for football at another level. But at the moment, you've got a team. That's the main thing. And hopefully we can say the same for Macclesfield at the end of next season. But unfortunately, there isn't really good news to end on in this one. So I can only thank Craig and Charlie for joining me. If you did enjoy it, please put a thumbs up on the video. If you're a Macclesfield fan, of course, it's not going to be easy to be happy. But let us know in the comments what your hopes are for the next season. And subscribe to the channel for regular content. Hopefully, some slightly happier news coming in the near future. But thank you very much for watching. Check us out on Twitter at HonestFootball3, and we'll see you next time.